You got the record going. There you
We
go.
are recording now, so welcome along, guys, to the Summer Stable webinar. Most of you that are regulars would note that we've not had one for a while. That's for a number of reasons. One, having a child's a bit more busy than it was previously for myself at this time of night, and also we probably thought that we were doing a few things that were similar all the time, and the feedback was that it was better if we had a few more topics on the one. So here we are, and we've got plenty to talk about because everybody knows, but we're absolutely low flying, Robbie, at the moment.
100%, Corey. It's great when everyone talks about plans coming to fruition and things like that, but when you have 3 years in the making and you start to see it evolve and develop and mature each year, it's really rewarding. So yeah, there's a real buzz around the stable, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Matthew, starting with this guy, we probably don't remember much from the last 50 metres because the mounting yard was a mosh pit. But starting with this guy, what a weekend we've just had.
Yeah, Corey, you can win big races, Group 1 races, Group 2 races all around the world. But when you have, 30, 40 people there supporting one horse and it comes together as it did on Saturday, there's probably no better feeling than that. So it was a really special feeling. And Ray keeps delivering those sorts of feelings. So he's much loved, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think somebody behind us, Robbie. I know you weren't there, but you were having a few cold ones with Philby and watching the race and enjoying it. But there was a guy up behind us who, at the 450 marker, said even Winks can't win from there. And then we probably all thought the same. But that once he got fresh air, he actually made some very good horses look pretty average.
Well, it was probably a fair statement because I don't think Winks ever won over 1100. So it was probably, he can get out of that one. So, yeah, it was quite a remarkable win to break 33 seconds the last 600 and overall 1:2:27. And he's running seriously good times. And when you give away a head start against progressive horses that can run that quick and pick them up, it was a really remarkable win.
I also noted, I'm just trying to find it in my messages here, Robbie, but I obviously sent it to you guys, which you already were aware, but I just go through a couple of times which were pretty incredible. I looked through the Oakley Plate winners for the last few years, and Ray actually ran a faster time than Portland Sky, who's a stallion, when he won the Oakley Plate. He ran 0.04 slower than Marabi, who carried less weight than him. He ran just a tiny bit, 0.4 of a second slower than Pippi, who was a machine. And then She Rippo, when he beat Najem Sahel, actually ran a slower time than Ray by about a second. So it was an incredible time.
Yeah, it was. And, been talking to the handicapper today, so Matt and I can make a plan as to whether we have a two-pronged attack in the Oakley Plate with Najem Sahel on speed, and this guy could possibly be in the middle, or as he showed the other day, he can come from back. So we're tossing up whether to do that. At the moment, normally a horse like him is disadvantaged at the weight scale because he's an 88 rater, and most minimums in a Group 1 are around 100. So you're talking he'd be carrying about 6 kilos more, even though he's on the minimum. But looking at it so far, it looks as though King of Sparta is talked about being potentially the highest rated horse in the Oakley Plate. So if that happens, it could make our two stablemates better off at the weights and what your traditional Oakley Plate is. So whichever way you look at it, they're good discussion points to have when you're talking Group 1 and exciting young horses like Najem Sahel and Ray Magnerio.
Yeah, and Matt, obviously coming into Australian racing a few years back, one of the main things for yourself to learn was obviously the rating system here and everything else. But you guys have absolutely nailed bringing Ray through the grades, and he's as Robbie's just mentioned, there's options to go to Group 1 races, but we've milked every single bit of prize money on the way up for the owners.
Yeah, the system here is a beautiful system in that it can reward horses that are able to go through the grades because it starts them off on a very low mark, and it allows you to win, gain confidence, and and keep building up a good bank. So it's a great system. And the beauty of Ray is that he started late in life. He started as a 4-year-old, so he was a mature horse when he started racing, which even helps when you're going through the grades as well. It's tough to go through the grades when you're a 3-year-old because you get tempted by all the big races, etc. But when you're a 4-year-old like Ray, you got all those options and you can be patient and place them well, which we've done. And now we're on that middle kind of range where we need to take the giant leap into some big races.
Yeah, and we had some fantastic runners on the weekend, Robbie, and I'm so loath to stay on one horse, but there's something about horses such as Ray and King Magnus fits this mold that they seem to capture the racing public. And from a stable perspective, they just seem to bring, like when you go to the races, people want to talk to you about these horses, and it's great for racing. Obviously, horses like Imperatrice on a grander scale get people talking, but for our stable, isn't it amazing when you go to the races and people are asking you about Ray, or you see that footage at the pub at a Bucks Day, and all these random people. I've got mates who have no interest in racing at all, but they backed Ray Magnerio on the weekend and that type of thing.
Well, I think they really personify that, you can get a good horse from anywhere, and the Magnuses that you're speaking about, Helborse and King Magnus, Ray Magnerio and so on, they weren't expensive horses to start, and because they improve with age, they just gradually get better and better. And they're so genuine, they try so hard. So all of a sudden, you put all that package together and you get an exciting career like any of those 3 horses, let alone the others that we've had in the stable, and Magna Purse shaping up like that as well. I think that everyone can resonate with that, and I think that's what those horses really create such a story,
And what we might do is we might just have a little bit of a chat about the weekend before we get to this. But speaking of cheap horses, Will Setterino and his syndicate with Arctic Girl on Friday was a pretty exciting second run.
Well, it was, and that really that was a big plus for she's what's called Vobis Platinum, where there's 4 categories of prize money. She's got a first prize money, the Vobis prize money, the gold prize money, and then $30,000 worth of redemption vouchers that they can have. So she did a really good job, and she was terrific. She was a bit slow away on debut on the heavy ground, but she flew the start the other day and she blew them away. So she was terrific.
Yeah, and just for those watching, if you haven't used it before, the Q&A function in the middle at the top there, if you wanted to ask any questions, feel free at any stage during the webinar to pop them up there. I'll look through that while the boys are answering and talking, and make sure that they get filtered throughout the webinar. So if anyone has any questions on anything, please let us know. And
Corey,
Matt,
Corey, I have a question.
Yep.
On that picture there with John Allen and Matt Knight, do you think I look taller?
Yeah, I think you're on a platform though, aren't you, Robbie?
Don't give up.
Standing on a box.
Step sideways.
Yeah.
I reckon I got Matt nailed there. I think I'm still on.
You're on your tippy toes.
I reckon Matt's glasses were weighing him down, and he's grown a couple of inches.
Yeah.
That's it.
So so Matt, obviously we talked a lot about Ray, but Saturday we had a double, and Ray set a class record and was just outside the track record. But there was another filly that set a class record, and she actually smashed it by a good second and a half. So if you wanted to touch on her.
Yeah, Just a Boom. She was awesome. They typical kind of American dirt style. They jumped and went a good gallop, and being by Justifier, she was able to withstand that, and she's got all the stamina and the strength that you require over those sorts of distances. And only having a 4th start, she was, bound to improve, and we've always had a good opinion of her, and she looks to be heading in the right direction. She's coming through the run, absolutely perfect. So she's a very nice young filly, and we've had a good few young fillies now over the last couple of seasons, and she definitely ranks right up there with them. So we're quite excited about it.
And Robbie, she was a sitting duck for about 250 metres. She hit the lead very early, and she actually stayed with them and almost toyed with them in a little way. As Jamie Mott said, she didn't quite know how to put them away, so she kind of just stayed in front of them until the last bit. But to stay in front at that pace was incredible.
Yeah, well, I think that even though she won last start, and it sounds silly when you say that's the first time she's been in front, but when she won at Pakenham, she literally got there right on the line. So she chased hard at Sandown, Cranbourne, and then chased hard to win at Pakenham, whereas she had the race won pretty early on Saturday. And, you know, Matt and I and Jamie just genuinely think she just didn't know what to do. She'd actually had never been in front that far out. So that can only bring her on. The knowledge of winning on Saturday can only help her a lot and give her a lot of opportunity to improve as she moves forward with the career.
Always makes for a good day at the races when you win one early and the pressure's off a little bit. The other one, so then we went into Sunday, and Matt, I'll come back to you now. Speaking of promising young fillies, so second starter on Friday, Just a Boom on Saturday, and then Charming Deal, owned by our loyal owner Jim Hogan in those nice Aberfeldy boy colours, comes out on Sunday and puts them away pretty nicely.
Yeah, Corey, she's a filly that's got a lot of talent, still does a lot of things wrong, especially pre-race, works up a lot of energy, but that sort of thing will be ironed out as she matures. But we really like her at home. She shows us good talent, and we loved her acceleration, you know, through the last furlong. She was nice and strong through the line. So she's another one, you know, we go out every year these last 3 years trying to buy quality fillies, buy good stallions out of good mares, and she's out of an awesome family by a champion stallion Done Deal. So you know, she's putting it together on the track, and she's the reason why we're working so hard, you know, for horses like her.
Yeah. And Robbie, we had a host of good runners on the weekend as well. So we had Black Orlov return to the races yesterday and run a really nice third. Very Bubbly was a bit unlucky on Friday night not to get a run at the right time, but honest as always. Any others I can think of? Thaler on Saturday as well. He on his return to the racetrack after being gelded looked like he measures up to city class and will get a win at that level as well.
Yeah, they're all good. You know, I think that we touched on Charming Deal, exciting young filly. Black Olive, she's had a checkered pathway to return to the races. So Matt and I believe there's plenty of improvement in her fitness. So Jai was quite happy with her, and it's hard to pick up those leaders on quick ground, which they were running at Sale on the warm day. And our old mate Daily Bugle, he always finds bad luck. We couldn't find him in the TV screen. When you can't find him in the wide screen TV, you know they've wasted a bit of that ground. So he hasn't been the luckiest of horses, but I'm sure in the right race he can be a winner soon too.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it's great. Every runner that's going to the races at the moment are running well. Even with Arctic Girl, when she won, we had Night Sun miss in a photo, which looked like a dead heat.
Took a long time, that photo. Geez, I thought it was going to be a dead heat the way it took so long, but he missed that by a millimetre. But he's had 3 runs back for 3 seconds and 2 photo finishes, and you know he's only going to improve when he goes up in distance. You know, as we know, he's a better horse the longer he gets into the distance ranges. So he's going to get his win soon.
Yep, and on the screen, which has been up there for a while, but since we had our last webinar, Matt, we had a double during Melbourne Cup week. We had a group winning double at Caulfield where we had King Magnus win the Group 3 and then Sarasana win the Group 2 Sandown Guineas. I guess it's been obvious that the team's been improving all the time, but the big question mark that everyone always said was, you know, you guys need to get a few more city wins or you need to get a few more group wins. Well, you've answered that pretty emphatically in the last few months.
Yeah, Corey, I think we've had a good last 6 months. It's been an awesome ride, and we've got a nice young army of horses that we're heading to the races with every weekend. Even the weekends coming up are going to be very exciting for us. We've got To Be or Not to Be, nice young 2-year-old running in the Blue Diamond Prelude on the weekend. So, you know, every weekend we go to the races, we've got strong hands, and we're really putting our hands up and collecting trophies. I don't think we're considered December trainers anymore because we seem to have a good stream of winners now throughout the whole season.
Yeah, and Robbie, I know that we've talked a bit about the form of you guys training is obviously outstanding, but that there is a direct correlation that when I started doing the weekly stable wraps and sending it out via email, that we've only had 2 weekends since then that we haven't had a city winner. So it's pretty much all down to the weekly wrap. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely, Corey. If it wasn't for the weekly wrap, we wouldn't be in the winner's circle. But No, it's like Matt says, it's when I know it's a repetitive thing we say, but when you put the building blocks there and you create the foundation, it's good to see it happen. And I think we're a leading trainer over the 4-day carnival by statistics, weren't we, Corey?
We were the leading percentage for trainers that had more than 5 runners. So obviously there are some people that have 1 runner for a winner. So anyone that had more than 5 runners, we had the highest percentage. And at the moment, we're sitting 8th on the log. We're above, I think we're 1 win off Peter Moody and Catherine Coleman, which is, they're heavyweights in terms of not just Moods' size, but the size of their stable. So it's hard to compete against all of those types of trainers, and you guys are right up there with them in terms of every statistic and metric that we measure in the industry. So it's pretty exciting to be involved. Like, from my perspective, as a team member, you can feel the vibe around the team. Like, obviously you guys feel that, but the team at home, the office staff, like the owners, there's a really good vibe around the team at the moment. So it's good to be a part of, and I'm sure that owners feel the same.
And I think that the other thing too is that, you're always in competition with every trainer you're up against, as you said, Moody or whatever, but we're not trying to necessarily get bigger. We're just trying to get better. And I think that that's evident. Everyone has their niche in the sport, like racing, and I think ours is sort of quite evident now that we're serious about getting into top class racing, and with what we're buying at the sales and what we're selecting, and any price range too. Whether we buy a horse that's lesser price, or Brendan has put up a question there about the $1 million filly that we bought at the Gold Coast, Ole Kirk, and Brendan's question is, are we moving ahead of schedule for the stables plans? And the answer is probably yes, because we didn't expect 3 years ago to be, putting our hand up for $1 million filly. So I think that really is a good example that Brendan's brought up there, that where we're trying to head. So we've got some beautiful young horses, which no doubt you'll touch on later, but it's great when it's all heading in the right way.
Yeah, preempted my next bit, so I was going to mention.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to mention to Brendan, that's how I got the Ole Kirk hat. We had to buy $1 million filly to get it, so it was well worth it. It's a really nice hat. So, but on a serious note, it does show a good sign of intent. There's a lot of, before we touch on that, Matt, I just wanted to touch on some of the horses that haven't even hit the track yet. So in those crops of horses that we've actually purchased, there's around 50 to 55% of them that haven't seen the racetrack yet, and they're actually still in the system. So, for example, Poetic Storm, who's nominated this week, horses like that, To Be or Not To Be, who's just had a debut last week. We've got a lot of talented horses in the system that people haven't seen yet. The 2 winners on the weekend, it's only their second start. So, we still have babies, really. So,
yeah, there's still a lot of youth in the team. There's still a few unraced 3-year-olds that are showing some good talent. Even one this morning, Woku had a trial this morning, Saxon Warrior 3-year-old filly. So, that's the thing. We've got this momentum, and it just keeps going, which is great.
And so I'll answer that. So we will touch more on the $1 million filly when we get to the sales bit, but I guess going to that level, Robbie, like you said, it's new for the stable, but it must feel good that you actually have the backing from a trainer's perspective. You've been in the industry for so many years, and I believe that's the most expensive horse that you've bought. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. No, she is. We've always spent less than that because we, naturally we didn't have the support to spend anymore, but we thought she was great value and had people to support us. And I think she's 85% done, I think it is, but those sort of horses we want in the stable, and everything that we buy, whether it's, as I said, whether it's a lesser price or a bigger price like her, they're ticking all the boxes that we're looking for that succeed on the track.
And Matt, we're going to touch on our sprinters now, and then we'll talk about our milers plus after. But you can see on the screen there, the first one's obviously the quarterback, which was Robbie's Group 1 winner prior to you coming along. But then you've got Hal Borson, the Gem Sahale, and Ray McNerio there that are potential Group 1 quality horses in the stable at the moment. But there's a whole host of sprinters at the moment in the stable. there's very bubbly performing regularly. I did send out an email. Celestial Storm. There's a whole host of them that are performing well. I guess what is it that makes a sprinter, and how do you identify them at the sales? Because effectively, we've picked Ray Magnerio out of a paddock. Your dad bought Najem Sahale in a sale, and every single one that we seem to be buying is hitting the mark in the sprinting ranks.
Yeah, Corey. Obviously, the process of going through, studying their what do you call it, their genetics and their pedigree, and then their physicals. So we go through our normal process, which we've explained on these webinars various times. But like Hal Borson was a homebred, so he found us, Ray Magnerio, Pete, and forget his brother's name now. The Ford brothers.
John.
They picked him for us, so they're part of the team. So all these different angles where the horses are finding us is great. And as you know, in Australia, there's a big pool of sprinters, so it's hard to find a good one when everyone's trying to buy that early speed. But we seem to be doing a pretty successful job of it at the moment.
And Robbie, I guess if you look at those 4 photos, what is it that, when you look at a type, what is it that, for those that may not know, looking at a sprinter, what makes it a sprinter? What are you looking for in a horse of that type?
Most of the speed horses are very strong, chunky bodies they got that look of a speed horse in terms of their overall strength, where some of the stayers or middle distance horses are slightly narrower, slender, and have a slightly longer body. So the quarterback was a beast. He was a really, really big, strong horse that raced at 560 kilos and was a massive big horse like his dad, Street Boss. And Ray Magnerio is very chunky. Magnus was built the same way. Najem Sahale is a bay version of his dad. Star Spangled Banner was a big, strong chestnut horse, similar to Najem Sahale, just different colour. And Hal Borson is quite nuggety and strong too, because he's not overly tall, as you can see there with how tall Andrew Mann looks. But even though we bred him and didn't outsource him, he was bred genetically to Easy Date, who's a Snippets mum and so on. And so I think if you can identify the genetics as well, you got to package it all up. It's not just one thing. A lot of people think, you just go buy a horse that's chunky and strong like them and they'll be good. There's more to it.
Yep. And we bought one that looks like an absolute speed machine at the Magic Millions, an Anders colt out of Anna Vale. And I mean, I know for a fact that we weren't going there specifically looking for Anders, because on our list we sort of said we'll keep an open mind, but we weren't sure. And then we got there and we loved a lot of them. But this one in particular looked just like Anders himself. And pedigree-wise, if you wanted to touch on why the pedigree works with the double Rory's Jester and that type of thing, but also what it is you loved about him.
Yeah, well, he just, as you say, he looks just like a speed horse. And when you see Anders, he's just the image of his dad. So he and he's very big and very strong. Like now, I reckon if you took him into the mounting yard, he'd look like he wasn't out of place in the 2-year-old race now, even though he's only a yearling. So he has the looks that you want to see of a speed horse like his dad, and he's out of a very fast family. So when you go back there and you see horses like Villa Verde that was so fast, and Doubtland and horses like that are now at stud, he's got the right genetics as a 2-year-old, and his dad was a 2-year-old and he looks a 2-year-old. So we think that he's one that'll just run very quickly. He could be one that we are looking at in the September, October 2-year-olds, Maribyrnong trials and races like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously the ideal scenario, Matt, would be go back and grab some of that Magic Millions money.
Yeah, well, that's one of our goals going forward now. Buying off the Magic Millions is trying to find one that we can hopefully take back up there and have some racing fun with whilst we're up there for the sales. And he's one that definitely puts his hand up. He looked almost ready to have the saddle on at the sales, recently. So he's a very forward type of animal.
Right, we'll go on to those that can get a bit more of a trip. And unfortunately, I've cut Aberfeldy Boy's head off, which is one of the best looking heads on a horse you'll ever see. But You got King Magnus there who runs a mile, Aberfeldy Boy who's obviously going to be trying to get into Melbourne Cups and Cups in the future. You've got Verdad who ran a derby but also looks sharp enough to run over sprint distances based on his trial this morning. You've got Magnaper who won over a mile, Justin Boom 1800. You know, you've got Let's Be Frank Baby. You've got Sarasana who won the Guineas. You've got a plethora of these, and they seem to be something that every time we buy one performs. So I might go to you, Matthew, because I know that your dad loves a classic horse. What is it that you love about them?
Yeah, I love classic horses as well. They're my personal favorite, and I just love that they take a bit more training, a bit more conditioning. The sprinters are a bit more they're natural in their speed. You can't really make them much faster than they already are. But these horses that like classic distances, you can train the stamina into them and really study their data and their heart rates and etc. And that data and heart rates always makes for interesting reading to see how good their cardiovascular system is and the recovery, etc. So it's always great going to the sales to identify them, and we've done a good job, as you mentioned. We've bought some very, very nice classic young horses that are all still got bright futures ahead of them. And when I envisage picturing the perfect horse, it's always a horse that looks like a classic horse in my mind.
Yeah, and Robbie, I guess it's an interesting idea and concept, but I know within our ranks we've talked a lot about if you go to New Zealand to the Karaka sales and maybe think outside the square and look for a sprinter because nobody else is looking for them. And same when you go to Magic Millions, which is a sale renowned for its sprinters, you picked up Aberfeldy Boy for a bargain $220,000. So, there's a lot to be said about looking for what others are not looking for in a sale.
Yeah, I think, if you go against the trends, what does Warren Buffett say? Sell when everyone else is buying and buy when everyone else is selling, So I think that Aberfeldy Boy is a great example of value to buy a stayer at a sale where everyone's looking for speed. I think he was lot 13, bred to be a classic horse, and nobody had that mindset. He would have made probably 500, 600, 700,000 at Karaka. But he was in the right place at the right time for us to take advantage of that, So I think that's the case where you go to a lot of sales, you got to try and go against it. And we let Karaka go this year because we thought they were going to be a bit expensive, and we didn't realise we were going to be that much of a Nostradamus. I think they were up 40%. So we didn't see a lot of value in that compared to other sales that we've been at thus far. So there's a lot to offer in our sales in Australia. So I think we did the right thing dodging Karaka.
Yeah, and Matt, obviously, probably not that obvious to everyone, but we do a lot of research around what size are in each sale, how many of them, which group races were won by horses from which sales, what the average price of each group race cost, and we try and identify certain races which maybe it is cost effective to try and win that Group 1 over maybe trying to win the Everest or whatever it might be. And quite often there's certain metrics that we find and gaps in the market. And I guess, Justin Bloom's a great example of that. We managed to buy her for 150,000 at the Easter sale with a great pedigree.
Yeah, exactly, Corey. We're always doing a lot of research. We only have a limited amount of bullets to fire each year at the sales, and so we try and make them, as potent as possible. We don't have a shotgun approach like a lot of the super size stables do. So we have to work extra hard to try and find the diamonds in the rough. And like you said, Justin Boom is a great example. Aberfeldy Boy is a fantastic example. Even Let's Be Frank Baby, these days to buy Franco for $400,000 is unheard of. They probably have to have 3 legs to do that.
Yeah, exactly. At this stage, you're not buying one for that price. So we might have once again bucked the trend when nobody wanted to buy a Justify. We went and bought a couple of them. So now that everyone wants to buy them, it's not so easy. So, and Robbie, that probably brings me to a really important part of buying. We're quite often, and something that you've done as a trainer for a long time, but in the time I've been there, it's something we do a lot of, is we identify a sire that has some first season sire that has a lot of nice horses on the ground, and we decide that we're going to buy the very best of that. We choose what we think is the best one. So, for example, you've got the Exceedance that we bought last year. Daily Bugle's probably the best press statement of the sales season. Press statement probably hasn't kicked on, but he's been a good, honest horse. This year, obviously, we bought Ole Kirks and Anders. If you want to explain how that can sometimes beat the market.
Yeah, well, I think that, no one knows for sure which stands are going to succeed, and only time and the volume of runners that they have, answers those questions. But, talking statistics, nearly all, supersize will have, when Reduce was at his peak, he was about 11% stakes horses. And some of the stands that aren't that successful might have, 3, 4, 5%, stakes performers. So numerically, if you're looking at 100, you're going to say, well, there's going to be 5 there that tick those boxes that are going to succeed for you. So the art is that we try to do. We go around the sales and say, if we find the best 5 Ole Kirks or the best 5 Anders or the best, there'll be 5 to 10 there that are going to be your really, really top line horses. So then you add that with their physical appearance, the mum, what she did, how the genetics back up, and how they complement one another. There's a pretty high level of probability you'll be one of those 10 good horses or 5 good horses that stand produces every year, So by doing that, that's sort of how, like Matt was saying earlier, we try to hit per bullet, don't have a lot of bullets, but we try to hit per one. So one of the best crosses was So You Think to get a classic horse is out of a bill man like him. And then you've also got other crosses with So You Think to get some speed horses, So like Think About It and so on. So doing all of that information and compiling it all into one and then getting the whole package together, you just give yourself a greater chance,
Yeah. And I guess the big question, I might go to Matthew for this, but this is what we bought. But what makes the Ole Kirk $1 million horse, Matt? People are going to say, well, you bought horses between $1 million and 80,000. They're all very nice horses. They're all very good chances to make it as race horses. What makes a horse worth $1 million or $2 million or, the price?
Yeah, it's 2 big egos. Obviously, she's. It always helps. They're standout horses. They do everything right. They got the right pedigree, the right physical from the right farm, and then you need the people with the budgets, to go in there and bid against each other. If it was only us in the ring, we'd have picked her up for 400,000. But there was 5, 6, 7 people that wanted the filly. Then there came down to three camps that wanted it desperately, then 2 camps that wanted it more than everybody else, and then there was 1 camp that was just stronger than everyone and said it had to come home, and that was us. So, some horses exceed their value, so to speak. I'm not saying she did, but that some horses do, because people get into a bidding war because they really love a horse, and we really love this one, and we wanted it to come home, and we made sure it came home.
Yeah, and Robbie, I guess in terms of loving it, you've gone to the sales for years and years and years, and you've loved plenty of horses, but you haven't spent $1 million ever before. I mean, the look in your eye every time you got this filly out of the box said that you were going to buy her at whatever price it was going to be, and I don't think you would have stopped at $1 million. I think there was still a few bullets to fire. Shirani was sitting next to you, very nervous, but you absolutely loved her. And what was it? I mean, I know from our point of view, we got every single check done, and we even got some extra checks like the hearts and biomechanics. But what was it that just had you taken by her?
Oh, she's got a real presence. So every time she stepped out of the box, one, she'd hold herself in a good frame, like you see in the picture there. And she's got that beautiful long leg, great girth, really strong hindquarter. And she had this unbelievable temperament. And when she put all that together and straight off for a walk, she had this fantastic flow, great overstep. And every time you looked at her, she had the same temperament. So whether somebody else was looking at her, Matt and I were going past all day working, and there was always someone had her out, and she never lost that temperament. So throw into the mix, her mum was a group performer. She's already got a half relation that's Group 1 place. There's a 2-year-old. So there's a lot of 2-year-old family, and there's black type right through it. And we know how much good fillies are worth when they earn the credentials of their genetics and then go to stud later on. So the reserve was 150,000 and the opening bid was 400,000. So that just goes to show you how serious everyone was. But we have a bit of a in-house joke, Matt and I, that when we find one that's just coming home, we put the 3977 postcode on that's coming back to Cranbourne, and we just bid until we buy it, and she fell into that category. And we think that she's a very, very, very safe investment based on how all the genetics work. And I mean, Ole Kirk really should be a good stay-in. He's by Written Tycoon and he's out of assisted at Black Caviar, and you've got Magnus in the family and All Too Hard that are already great stay-ins. So of all the young stay-ins, he really, credential-wise, he should really be very, very good.
Yeah. And the best mares, I guess, post-race career, the best mares that get sold quite often, their racetrack performance alone gets them, $2, $3, $4 million in the sales ring. So I guess if you're buying what you consider the very best filly in the sale, and potentially, for a couple of sale seasons, she's the best filly that you, in your opinion, you've seen, it wouldn't take much for her to be worth more than what you paid.
Well, that's right. And the big thing about every filly we buy, whether they're expensive like her or whether they're inexpensive, like breeds like, what's the old saying, you can't escape your genetics and so on. So she's such a beautiful physical female that she's going to produce really good looking yearlings. So when the buyers choose to buy her for the breeding barn in future years, they look at her and say, well, she's going to produce yearlings like that. So most mares that cost that money produce yearlings that cost similar money to sell. So that is a very important part of her investment value, is how she looks, how she acts, and the genetics. So, yeah, she's an absolute beauty, and we're very fortunate to come home with her.
Yeah, and I do have a few questions there, guys. So keep them rolling. I'll just work them into when they fit in. There's a few that relate to questions I've got and what I'm going into. But Matt, I might just touch on each of these. So I'll start with you. If you go with the Done Deal Autumn Wild colt there, I know that he was in our top 3. So we bought the Ole Kirk filly that we thought was the best horse in the sale. And this Done Deal colt was in our top 3 as well. And we managed to bring him home for 400,000.
Yeah, Corey, he was a really nice physical specimen. As you can see in the picture there, he's got muscles coming out of places you didn't know there was muscles. And often people that had seen Militarized were commenting on how much so he looked like Militarized. And we had a bit of competition in the sales ring with him when we purchased him. And then, interestingly, just sitting there after we had purchased him, within 10, 15 minutes, we had sold 40% of him because there was so much interest in him and people wanting him. So he is a very, very nice horse. And, his mother was a 2-time winner out of Snitzel. So plenty of speed there. He's entitled to be early and kick on as a 3-year-old as well.
Yeah, and there's a bit of an omen there, Robbie, because he'll race in the colours of Stormboy, who won the Magic Millions. So hopefully lightning strikes twice there.
Yeah, that's fantastic for the stable to have the Ridgemont colours in there, and they know how to go first past the post, as we've seen. So they're very successful, and they're investing a lot into the industry, and they're getting a lot out. So it's fantastic for them. But yeah, as you said, he's a super colt, and he's got versatility in his pedigree, because he should have the sharpness of his grandmother, Regimental Girl, was an absolute flying machine, and and Mum being a 1,000-meter winner, and then Done Deal, we know how strong they are. So everyone that we ran into, reiterating what you're saying, they kept saying he's just like Militarized. So he's travelled back beautifully from the Gold Coast, and he's looked at him in the paddock the other day, and he's just in great order. So he's a pretty special colt.
Yeah, and I'll try and go through in order of when we bought them. So the Anders colt you spoke about a bit before, but that photo, it's funny how a photo and seeing a horse in real life give you a completely different feel, because my opinion is that photo doesn't do him any justice. He's actually a big, strong, imposing boy, and the photo, he actually looks quite small there, which is absolutely not the case.
No, that's true. It's a shame, because he is a massive big brute, and you can probably see, the size of his girth and his bum and his rump in there. But, the fado itself looks like he's a bit small, but he's probably one of the biggest and strongest of the half a dozen that come home, So
Just
it's always
gonna
difficult because everyone says which is your favourite. Well, it's always hard to say that because we love them all, that we just bought them at different stages of how they're growing out,
see if I can get the website up. Bear with me here. Sorry, guys. I know what I've done.
What have you done here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm trying to get the. Let's just go.
We'll end up dropping us out here.
That's
Oh,
all
there
right.
we go.
Bear with me, everyone. I do have a method to my madness. Let's watch the video of him here,
Okay.
and just because I'm actually not very happy with that photo.
Geez, I need to go on a diet, don't I?
Yeah, you're an imposing figure yourself there, Robbie.
Blocked us out somehow. Here we go.
He's back.
You're back. Is he concentrating hard? Oh, yeah, he's
Corey,
he was frozen for a minute.
I've got you there. Are you back?
We're back.
Could you guys see it or not?
No,
No.
your whole screen paused, so I don't think it was a good idea.
That's all right. I'll send a link to those that came to the webinar. So, or if everyone that's watching, if you just log on, and have a look on our website at the video of him, you'll see that he's just an outstanding moving horse. So very exciting.
Interestingly, he's got a massive scar on his offside, which you can't see in the picture because that's his near side. On his offside, he's got a big scar from his shoulder that runs all the way to his last rib, just about. With a little bit of he had a paddock accident, but it was not only all superficial. But it's actually left quite a cool looking scar that'll keep him standing out. That's for sure.
And we'll go to so then we bought a Farnan filly, which obviously sold pretty much straight away. But we might brush over that a little bit, Matt. But just briefly, another sprinting type.
Yeah, another first season sire Farnan was a super horse winning the Golden Slipper, and this pedigree is a pretty strong pedigree. 14 stakes winners in the first two dams. So, and we picked her up for $100,000. It's an American pedigree, but it's just testament to the work that we do to try and get the best value that we can for everyone. And she's one that looks quite nice.
Yep, and apologies to everyone that we paused you, but Robbie, if you just want to touch quickly on the Blue Point, I believe that she probably sold, but there is a small chance that there could be some shares become available in her. So just if you wanted to touch on what we liked about her.
Well, she's another one that, ticked all the boxes in terms of good straight legs, very big girth, as you can see there. She had a little bit more length of batter, probably coming from the Savabeel and O'Reilly in the first two dams, but it's a very strong New Zealand family. She's got a massive nostril and she looks more masculine than feminine. And we think Blue Point, they've showed so much talent in Europe, and there's so many horses that have bolted in trials and started favourite here. I don't think they're mature enough to run as early as everyone's looking for at the moment in Australia. But long term, we think they're going to be very good horses. And the Charmondale bloods work so well in Australia. So she's out of a family of, the third dam legs was an outstanding filly. And, some of these sides you just read out, Savabeel, O'Reilly, Pins, Santain, they've been so successful in Australia and New Zealand for years. And I think she's going to prove to be very valuable. And I know she's probably sold. But anyway, they're the reasons why we bought her,
Yep, I've just got, and these guys have been waiting pretty patiently. I've got two questions about the Prague filly, Robbie. So I'll let you answer that, obviously, and then I'll cross to Matt about the family, obviously, with a Gugu in it. So if you wanted to say why you loved her on type, and then I'll pass over to Matt.
Yeah, well, she's another one where the photo doesn't do her justice. She was going through a bit of a growth phase, and she's got a lot more weight on her than what's in that photo. She looks a bit lean there, but she's got an unbelievable big step and really flows, uses her body incredibly well. And we know how good Redout's Choice is, and his sons and so on. And Prague's got he's got the pedigree and he had the early speed. So, and you put that into a deep field mare, and we know how well deep fields are going. So all that ticks up well, and then Matt will touch on this in a minute, but the mum's and half sister to the champ at Gugu. So there's a lot of residual value there because of the quality on the page. And when you see her get around, you nearly need to stop, watch on her at a walk. She flies around. So most horses with that flow are normally very successful. So we think that she was incredibly good value.
Yeah, she was great value. And Matt, you might just touch on a Gugu because it might be just one of the better ones that you've ever seen.
Oh yeah, Gugu's the best horse that I've worked with. She's the best filly on paper in South Africa. She won 10 races, 5 Group 1s. I think she won 7 races in a row. By the champion sire of the world, Galileo. She's when you walk around the sales ring, she's a household name, even in Australia. That's a big thing to say for a South African horse. But yeah, she was absolutely special. And she had a very similar temperament to this filly in that she would come off the track in the morning with a handler on each side and a jockey on top, just to hold container. She was like a bull. So this filly, like Robbie said, she was pacing around and quite a similar temperament to Gugu.
Which is, if she's got an ounce of a Gugu's talent, then we could be in for a bit of excitement. So I've got a few questions now, Robbie, so I might go through some questions first, but one of the questions leans into this next bit anyway. So James Nolan just says, do we have any other sales lined up with Sydney Classic or Melbourne, and are there any other Magnuses coming through? So if you can sort of answer those two, that would be great.
Yeah, well, we're going to do all the sales. We didn't do Karaka as we said before, but we're doing Classic, Melbourne Premier, Tasmania, Adelaide, Easter. So there's quite a bit to come yet for us to look at. There will be other Magnuses, I'm sure, which we haven't looked at them all yet. But we also breed some ourselves because we know we got the genetic cross worked out there because we've bred Hal Warson. So we don't have to rush in and buy too many Magnuses because we're breeding some, but we will try and buy a list of different breeds so that everyone has something for their taste buds,
Yeah. The next question was, since Ray Magnerio is a wrestling name, are we going to name one of our horses Andre the Giant? I mean, anything's possible. If you buy a horse from us 100%, you can name it whatever you like. So we'd be more than happy to name any of these new yearlings Andre the Giant if you want to buy it in partnership with us.
We better check if the name's available. I don't think it takes 17 years before the name comes around again, and I have a feeling Andre's name might have been taken. But anyway,
I think we'd be in danger of representing a Magnus because Andre the Giant would have to be a big horse, and most Magnuses are pretty small.
They are small. That's right. They are.
Yeah,
that's true. And just on the screen there, obviously with the upcoming sales, as Robbie said, we do look at every horse in every sale. So even though we didn't go physically to Karaka, I know, Robbie, you still look through every single page, and we all still tick every box before we make sure we haven't just blindly missed it. And I know that you actually were bidding on one of them, a Justify there that went for way more than you thought it was worth. So, that we won't name names or lot numbers, but it's not like we had no interest at all. We definitely still had our finger on the pulse.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we don't really let a sale go by without doing our homework. But yeah, some of the ones we identified did bring a lot more than we wanted to pay. But we didn't physically go, but we had enough people on the ground and doing enough work ourselves at home to marry all that up. So yeah, you're quite right. We don't turn our back on any sale, but we're going to be a physical presence at the other ones, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, and at the English Premier Sale in Melbourne, which is March 3rd, 4th and 5th, we actually have a marquee there, which is for all of our owners or friends and family or interested parties. So you're welcome to come along, have a drink, have a bite to eat, meet Matthew and Robbie and the team, and see how a sale works. There's no obligation to obviously buy a horse. We'd love it if you all did, but obviously there's no obligation there. It's a great day out, and what we do almost in lieu of a stable day, I guess. That's our way of getting you out there to see as many horses as you can and be part of the process. So I will send an invite out to everyone, both who are involved with the webinar and all our ownership group. So hopefully we'll see as many as we can there. It's always a good day. And
it is a great day, that marquee, because it's in a really good spot, so everyone can. It's good if you do get time to come out, especially on the Sunday, because you'll be able to see, what we've done all week with our work. But also too, if anybody, ends up organising a group of their own or whatever, you can come in with us and have a bid. We'll let you bid yourself, because that's really exciting. We've had owners before that have put a group together, and they had the experience of having a bid, and it's very exciting. So you can certainly might be able to do that with us too.
I think I'm banned from bidding now, aren't I, Robbie?
I think so. You had no luck.
So Typhoon Tipness was pretty good though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we'll let you off there.
You have some, Jonathan Pyle said, you have some yearlings for sale. Do they need to be 100% sold before they start breaking in or working? So I know the answer to that, but I'll let you answer, Robbie.
Yeah, no, it's full steam ahead, whether we own 100% of the yearling or whether they're all sold. It's irrelevant. The show goes on. The main reason why we secure horses at the sales that we want to see at 4 a.m. that we think's got the faith to be the good horses, the Sarasanas and Romagneris of the world and so on. And we can't afford to wait for orders for people to say, if buy us this horse or buy us that horse, So we go and identify what we believe has the talent to race at the top level. And so if that horse is 100% unsold, he or she will still go to the breaking in facility. And if they're all sold, it just makes cash flow a lot easier to go buy another one at the next sale.
Speaking of buying on spec, Matt, we might just give Robbie a bit of a shout out here, because I'd say that there's probably about 2% of the horses that are sold at $1 million plus that are ever bought on spec. And Robbie bought that filly with no owners at the time. So he was pretty, it just shows that I guess as a team, we're trying to move our stable forward and buy what we believe will take us forward.
Yeah, no, Robbie doesn't like to lose in the bidding ring. He's pretty strong. So we definitely give Robbie props for that. But it's testament, when you go out and do that, it's testament to the support that we have, based on the success that we've had. So it's been a long road to get there, but it seems like we've pounced at the right time and broadened our minds at the right time.
Yeah, and obviously, I'll lead into the next question from Craig Miguel. He just said, given your plans ahead, can you nominate a stayer that might potentially reach races like the Cox Plate, Caulfield Cup or Melbourne Cups? Or do you have aspirations in these areas? So, I mean, you might touch on Nation's Call and how we sourced him. And obviously, the obvious in Aberfeldy Boy, and then any others that you might think could take us to those races.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few stayers that I would say probably looking for a little bit further than the Cox Plate, like Aberfeldy Boy and Let's Be Frank Baby. They're probably more 12 furlongs and more types of horses at this stage. Nation's Call is a horse we bought from overseas by Frankel, but he's still a bit unproven at 10 furlongs. He looks more like a sprinter miler at this stage. So, unless one of these 3-year-olds really step up like the likes of Verdad, he's looking like somewhere between a mile and 10 furlongs is going to be his sweet spot. And if we plan a nice pathway through his 3-year-old campaign and save some energy for that early spring, he could be certainly a horse that could be looking at that type of race. And he's raced successfully at Moonee Valley as well. So he's already ticked a lot of the boxes as with regards to running in a Cox Plate.
Yeah. And Robbie, Saturday circumstances showed that Ray potentially has the option to race over further. So would an Orr stakes or a futurity stakes for a horse like him be an option next year?
Possibly next year, because there is a bit of stamina in his family. We trained a couple out of the family. One was a horse called Testalux. It was only a moderate horse, but he was in the Metro for us over 2,000 metres. But while Ray's explosive, we'll probably exhaust all avenues in the sprints. But as those options, as he wins his way out of those options. Certainly looking at a race like that would be something on his scope for sure.
And another one for you, Robbie. What's the optimal stable size?
Oh, I think our stable size is terrific at 60. I think we've got 100. We normally have about 100 on the books and about 120 when we do the yearling buy. Then we sell 20 off and things like that. So I think that's a nice size. And as I said earlier, some of the super stables have got, sort of 800 to 1,000 horses spread around Australia and things like that. And good on them. They do a great job. And we're not sort of trying to compete with them per se. We just want to get better at what we do. And we think that if we can buy our 25 yearlings each year and try and land horses like we have been, I think 60 is a nice number for us at the moment. If we did extend it, it wouldn't be by much. It might be by 10 horses or something like that. I think that's pretty fair to say, Matt, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if we just trying to focus on quality instead of quantity at this stage, and enjoying our racing and enjoying being personable with people as well. Sometimes when you get too big, it becomes too hard to be personable, and I feel like we're enjoying that side of it as well, being able to socialize and enjoy quality racing.
Yeah, good point.
And Matt, one for you. Harry Williams was just asking why you haven't mentioned Eagle Warrior after his win in those big staying races. So he's probably got a few more steps of the ladder to climb, but it was a good start.
Yeah, no, that also has jumped out of the ground. He was very immature and backward. So if he keeps jumping out of the ground with his next prep, then anything's possible. He can soar like an eagle.
And Robbie, this one, all they're asking is about his return, but it's not out of the question. He could be a future Cox Plate horse in Akachita.
Yeah, he's a real star. He's one that we loved him at the paddock before he went to the yearling sales, followed him through and bought him, and he's been terrific. He blew him away on debut, and he should have won his next run, and he's only had the 2 starts, and the form around the horse that beat him, what's it, Southport Tycoon?
Yeah.
He come out and ran second his next run to Sapati, beating the Whisker. So he's got all the right Group 1 form lines through the Caulfield Guineas and so on. So he's having a gallop in the morning. Matt and I were delighted with his gallop the other day when John McNeil galloped him. So he's going to be a little bit out of line with Melbourne and Sydney for the big ones because he needed a bit of time for his bones to mature. But at some stage, he'll find himself in a really big race. So hopefully it's something like a Craig Lee over the mile in the spring, or whenever it is, it'll be. We just got to wait for Mother Nature with him, but he's very talented.
Yeah. And Peter Stanley says, Matt, that Racing.com reported a 20% reduction in the number of 2-year-old horses racing this year compared to last year. What do you believe is influencing the change, and have we made any changes to our 2-year-old program?
Yeah, it's a good topic. It's probably one we could debate for a while, longer than this webinar goes for. But an interesting podcast to listen to was one that Mick Kent had on RSN the other day, saying, and I strongly believe in what he said as well, in that the way horses are being bred these days is mostly for the sales ring and not for the race course, and it's becoming a little bit more difficult for us to put the pressure on the horses when they're so heavy as young horses and so forward. It's taking a long time for us to get the weight off them that they got at the sale. Some of the horses are weighing over 500 kilos and they're only a year old and they never reach that weight again. And he was comparing it to horses in Japan at the same age are 50 to 60 kilograms lighter. So their skeletal system is handling it a bit better than the horses here locally, which is a shame. But the trend will buck itself and it'll fix itself. People will eventually realize that you can't do that, and you got to start buying off farms that are producing runners and not sales stoppers. So it's a very debatable subject, and maybe people are starting to realize that there is more value to it than trying to have a blue diamond horse. Maybe they're starting to realize that the long-term picture that Australia actually has some of the wealthiest and biggest races over ground. And if you're a bit patient, with horses like Sarah Sana, she won in December, but she ended up only winning the very next December because we were patient with her. So there's a lot of aspects to it. We ourselves, we haven't changed anything in our philosophy yet. We're pretty comfortable with how we're doing things at the moment. we electing to be patient and let the horses tell us, the ones that want to be early, like the to be or not to be's of the world. I think we only had maybe 2 or 3 runners by this time last year as well, Robbie. I think it was like Sir Sana and Celestial Storm and maybe 1 or 2 others as well. But this year again, we've only had 2 2-year-olds at the same point. So we haven't drastically changed anything. Maybe there's a loophole in the future if the numbers are already low to try and push 1 or 2 to be early. But the thing is, you got to let the horses do the talking. You can't push them for something that they're not ready for. So we're just going to continue to buy our broad spectrum of horses and let them talk to us and tell us when they're ready.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the farms, because it's another area that we do a lot of research around, and we try and buy from those proven, I guess, nurseries. And Robbie, also if you touch maybe like just as I guess we have changed our philosophy slightly, because we did so much data around the fact that when Stormboy won the Magic Millions and sold for 22 million plus kickers up to 50 million, only 2% of the foal crop has actually seen the racetrack so far. And so when we were at the Magic Millions and we were looking at that Anders colt, it was a fair bit of discussing him and saying, if we can get him up and going and he's racing against only 2% of the rest of the foal crop, he should monster them.
Well, that's true. And what Matt was saying before is that we don't push our horses, but the old saying is a 2-year-old finds you, and that Anders colt, he's a beast, but it's all in proportion. His backside's relatively level with his wither. So it doesn't look like he's been pushed to be a yearling. He's just there already. He's just matured early. And he's from a farm that's produced so many Group 1 winners in Widden Stud. So we've really concentrated on the farms these horses have come off, that when we tick all the boxes, the farm has to be one of them too. So Widden does that. New Haven did that with the filly, and every other purchase that we've had comes off a very successful farm. So once we listen to the horse, like Matt said, then they'll run whenever that is, whether it's 2 or 3, it's up to them. But he could be one that runs in October the way he looks now, yeah.
Yep. And speaking of Widden, the next question Stephen Watts asked is, I thought the debut run of To Be or Not To Be was incredible. Did she surprise you with her performance, and how good do you think she can be? She came from Widden, so did Celestial Storm. So Matt mentioned 3 horses and 2 of them came from Widden. So
yeah, well, she was one that we actually could have ran her before the autumn, but we elected to hold her up. She had a very soft winning trial, and then we give her a little rest, and then we brought her back and targeted the preview on debut, knowing that we were pretty confident that she'd give us one hell of a run. And she did. She got beat at Whisker, but that cements her value now. All of a sudden she's placed at group level in the best series in Victoria for 2-year-olds. And then so any filly that's got Blue Diamond form or lead ups to the Golden Slipper form, they're worth a fortune at stud later on. So did she surprise us? Not at all. She'd done everything right. She trialled really well at Caulfield, and she'll give us a great run again Saturday.
It was also very, very difficult to sell. One of the hardest horses that was one of the last yearlings from last year's crop that I got rid of. So I think a few people, when I rang them to say, listen, this filly's a really good filly, they were thinking it was a sales line or a sales pitch, when actually we were trying to get them into a really good one.
Yeah, well, I mean, that can happen. I mean, sometimes, I don't know. I mean, the Piratas are going really well. We're really pleased with our ones that we have, like her and, and the little one out of Fidelia and so on. So, yeah, they've been super. So, but I think that's just, like she ticked our boxes in terms of physical, but also too, the mating worked really well out of a Written Tycoon mare. So it's, that all works. So the good thing for us is that whether anyone joined us with their ownership or not, at some point in time, she would sell herself and hold a value like she did when she went to Caulfield.
Yeah, and Matt, Stuart McRobert just asked, what chance does Ray realistically have of getting a run in a race like the Open Plate?
It's hard to say. Like Robbie was saying, they was just checking with the handicapper where he sits with regards to ratings. It's just going to come down to how many horses are nominated. I think the the balloting process is ratings based. So if he's not high enough, then unfortunately he's going to be balloted. It's not on ability because he's got a lot of upside, but just purely being an 88, he may not be high enough to gain a run. Hopefully, it's not a full field or something like that, and we can be in the race because we know we're good enough to be there.
No. I am just getting a couple of text messages about the Anders colt now, so hopefully people don't miss him like they missed the Piarata. So and they'll be in a nice big race this time next year. It'll be good. Adam West just asking how Kerensky pulled up today, but would it be fair to say, Matt, that you probably won't know until tomorrow or the next day? You normally give them 48 hours.
He seemed to pull up good. Early signs were very good. He had a healthy blow. He looked nice and comfortable after the trial, relaxed, and he looked happy. So, like you say, we normally take 24 to 48 hours to fully assess him, but the early signs were great.
And finally, Robbie, and it's more of a comment than a question, but I thought I'd give her a shout out anyway. Janice Thomas has just said, I was blown away when she saw the Ole Kirk filly, and being such a glamorous grey, she's glad to be a part of her. And look, people like Janice and all of the owners that have been with us for years, they're the mainstays and the backbone of the business, really, aren't they?
100%, and it's so great that Janice is in her, because Janice has had a lot of luck with the greys, and we were in the same situation many years ago in Adelaide. We bought the top lot, and she was 170,000, and everyone said it was a lot of money at the time. And that filly was Fidelia, and she ended up being a really good group quality filly, and she ended up being sold for good money to the breeding barn. So, this filly is, if you look back at the pictures of Fidelia at the Adelaide sales and this one, they're very similar. So it is exciting, and we're so happy that Janice is in the team with her, and it's going to be an exciting future.
And it's pretty engaging webinar tonight. There's a lot of questions, so thank you very much for everyone that joined us. All of you that have shares, whether it's 1% or 100% of a horse, without you guys, the business can't run. And I know that, after 3 years, 4 years, however long I've been with the stable, I don't think we could compare our ownership group with any others. I think they're just outstanding, and the feeling when Ray Magnerio won on the weekend probably just summed up our ownership group across the board in all our horses. They're there to have fun, and they support us really well. So thank you very much, guys, that are on there.
And Corey, just to butt in for a second, what about when King Magnus won at Caulfield and Sarasana's owners, only Luke Wilkinson was present because they were all internationals or couldn't be at Caulfield. So they kept the room going for another 40 minutes whilst they stayed in there with King and then followed up with Sarasana. So that was another hell of a day where it was a lot of fun. So to see that energy amongst our ownership group is sensational.
King Magnus has given us a couple of those, and so has Ray now with the last race of the carnival, and then this Saturday. And Just the Boom was actually my first ever winner at Caulfield. I've always hated that track. I've never had any luck there. And the one day we got the group double, I didn't go. So I almost banned myself, because last week we went there and we got pipped in the photo with To Be or Not To Be, and we came second with the Gem. But I thought, the hoodoo's got to be broken eventually. And then, bang on Saturday. So I can go now with confidence. So thanks very much, Robbie. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time, and thank you everyone who joined us.
Thanks for everyone's support.
Everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you.